Joe, go ahead and start it.
Yeah,
I agree. Dean.
Yeah. We should adopt the rules of the WWF.
Right there you go.
We're gonna have a contest for guys that coolest song.
Dan, you need one of these here.
I'll take one, sure.
That would be awesome.
Sign
Someone suggested to me that to me after the meeting, just staff could hold up signs.
Behind us.
Behind your head.
Alright,
It would just be like, you know, to our friends. Tell when my kid's high.
Anybody else need something, Marcos?
no.
Everybody have one?
Thank you.
All right. So, what I wanted to do with the finance committee today is go through where we are on the fiscal 19-20 budget. So, it's up there, and it's also the second page of the handout. These were the departments that were requested in excess of their target, who we also had the presentations from at the county board meetings. And those are the amounts, and it totals $2,177,663 over target. Then the second page has that $2,177,663, but it's also offset by revenues and tax estimates in excess of initial projections. And 90% of this $1,000,003 is from the treasurer's office. That, you know, about a year and a half ago, we implemented this plan where we were going to take excess free cash that they have down there, and we invest it with these fixed income money managers. And you know, interest rates have been going up over the past year, and even though we're investing short term in good investments, it's generating a lot more cash than we initially thought. So actually, the treasurer's projection and what they put into their budget is you know, about $1,000,003 greater than what our projections were. And John Ewing actually wants to come and make a presentation at a county board meeting and bring everybody through that. But it's a good thing. And so net, that gives us a preliminary budget deficit at this point of about $870,000. So the purpose of this meeting is to really try and get a consensus of how people would like to handle this preliminary budget deficit. And you know, you can see where it's coming from, and so I would throw it out to see if there's any thoughts. You know, some of these things we talked about, and I think, let's say like corrections, I don't think there's a lot of flexibility there. It kind of is what it is given the state of the jail these days. But other than that, I would throw it open to any of the commissioners here to talk about what their feelings are on if there's any of these budget requests that they think might not be necessarily in order. So I'll throw it open.
Quick question, if I may. What was the growth in the tax base for your figures?
5%.
Ooh. Even after BOE, you think we might have that much? I thought the preliminary figures were 5, and I figured we'd end up about 4.
Preliminary set figures were 6.
Okay, all right.
And we're using 5.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like they're really, you know, I don't know that we've discussed all these, and I think they're, you know, I always, I'm not really after the register of deeds assessor or anything, but we've talked about, you know, they have that duplicate GIS thing, and there could be some savings there. I don't know. Last time, you may remember, I told her point blank that I was going to, a couple times ago, I guess, that we were going to cut it, and she said, that's okay, I'll get the money somewhere else, which of course she did. But anyway, so, and I'm not, you know, I supported her opponent, we didn't win, so I mean, we need to support her in a way that makes sense, whatever we need to do to make sure that office functions, we don't, to the best of their ability. I think the other ones are all, you know, I kind of question the sheriff all the time because you wonder who they're, with the annexations that take place, and I don't know what the population is, I guess they claim it's quite a bit more than I thought, but, I
They're
guess.
protecting Bennington now.
Yeah. But I guess the deal is that, I don't know what we would cut into what amount. I mean, if you look at these, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these are justice issues, corrections and public defender and so forth, which is accounting for more and more of our budget. The other thing I mentioned to Joe was that yesterday we were at the health center meeting, and they talked about peer-to-peer and mental health work and another unfunded mandate out there. And I really think we should add that $98,000 to this budget. We do need, that's a very important thing to be funding, and it's just another unfunded mandate. Waiting for Health and Human Services to come around is not a good thing. So I am proposing that we add $98,000 to the
Didn't
health.
Patrick,
center
didn't
budget.
Sherry Glassman send some, an email out today about, was it 98 or 90?
It's, I have to look and see which one it was.
But
98,
But she
it's-
she sent an email with a figure in it.
Okay.
So, whatever that dollar amount is that
Yeah.
she says they need, that's what I'd like to
Okay.
propose. And the other thing is, construction plans, again, you know, we have some offices that are remodeling, and actually they're remodeling this building, I'm not even sure they're talking to the building commission about it. So they're making county money being spent on a building we don't own. I guess that's what can be done by tenants, I suppose, if you want to improve things. I'll defer to PJ. But anyway, so I think, I'd like to know what those funds are. I'm not saying we clamp down and beat the hell out of anything.
Yeah, we have those, and it's really only one department per se, and it's the Register of Deeds who's doing it with her technology fund that, you know, the statute gives her control over. And she's used that for her, for most of her construction costs. It's not been done through the Public Building Commission or through her general fund allocated budget. So I don't know, but I'm not sure how much authority we have on that one.
Well, maybe it'd be a good suggestion, just if Patrick could, or ask Chris Rogers to write a letter to department heads and elected officials that if you plan any remodeling, be sure that if it's, you know, to follow some kind of procedures, at least notify Leahy, for God's sake, you know, and involve them. Don't hire outside people to do drawings and crap. Just a friendly suggestion and see what happens. You know, try to get some control over that cost. And the last thing is, and I think Joe does a good job of this, getting the encumbered funds out. Who's got funds encumbered and for what purpose? And the last thing I want to say is, on this money thing you talk about, the fixed income money managers,
Yeah,
whose idea was that?
mine.
I thought so. I really congratulate you, and that's a hell of a good idea, obviously, so thanks very much. Really, that's big time.
Yeah, it's been, it's what we should have been doing, and
Thanks.
I took our pension fund consultant and had them do a survey of the fixed income managers, and we came in and interviewed them with the treasurer's office, and we picked 2 of them, and, you know, like I say, John Ewing's gonna come and talk about it, but it's been a real successful.
Well, I wanna make sure you get the mother load credit for that. I think it's fabulous, so thanks a lot, you're doing a terrific job, for the record.
Thank you.
Carol?
2 thoughts. One is, I mean, that is great to see our funds being better utilized, but I'm confused because I remember Julie Haney starting a policy where parking funds overnight, if she had monies overnight,
Right.
she would find a way. So I'm confused. I mean, it's,
What?
I thought we'd been doing this all along.
No, well, we could park them overnight, and then those overnight rates were minuscule, and then they were
Right.
using to offset the bank fees. But then there was also, we decided we could follow the lead of the Nebraska Investment Committee and do the same sort of investments that they were doing. So we got their criteria, and so we're allowed to invest in AAA government-backed securities with maturity up to 2 years. And so then we got, and before, you know, First National Bank used to call somebody in the Treasurer's Department and say, well, do you want to invest this and that? And to be honest, we don't have that level of expertise. So we outsourced it to the fund managers, and like I say, using fund managers that we did a screen on, and picked a couple good guys who kind of specialize in this, gave them, I think they have, like, they're investing $90 million right now. And we record that, Jody, don't you book that income monthly? So we take that income, and it comes in as general fund income on a monthly basis now.
Well, certainly this is a very good thing, and I appreciate everybody that has worked on that.
And yeah, it's the Treasurer's Department, myself, Sherry Larson, we have John put together, Mike Green is on it as an outsider. So we have a investment committee through the Treasurer's office where we sit down once a quarter and go through all this.
Thank you. The other thought I wanted to share is on the sheriff's budget, as I recall, this was about process servers. This is one that Don Klein came with him
Yes.
to present, saying this will help our
Right.
office if he could have these people.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Because the juvenile court said they can't do it anymore.
does anybody have any
Oh,
other
really?
thoughts before I throw something else out?
Jim Cavanaugh.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
couple of questions, Joe. What's our current reserve amount?
Our current reserve amount, when I saw the cash report yesterday, was about $23 million as of yesterday.
And this happens every year, so you'll have, should have a number for 17, 18, and I'd like an estimate for 18, 19 as well. The unexpended amount, when we come to the end of the fiscal year, people have money left in their budget, what was that in 17, 18, if you know?
I don't know it right off the top of my head.
Can you get that for me,
Yeah.
please?
Why don't you get that for all of us?
And, we're coming up on that again, so, a couple weeks when we have that number, that'll be good to know. These, and I'm figuring you're gonna get to this in a minute, but just before we go there, these juvenile justice numbers, is that for 18, 19, that $6 million number?
That was the one I was gonna start to talk about. Maybe if there's not any other questions, I could take us all through that.
Okay, but, I'm not seeing a date on that. It says year 1, 2, 3, but
No,
that's 6.
that's for next year, 19, 20.
19,
There's
20.
nothing this year.
I got you. Okay, 19, 20.
Mike, did you wanna say anything on GIS?
I don't think we can do anything about it.
I
think
know
it's a dead dog.
Mike said something that we could run it, he said there's improvements that he could make.
Yeah, well, he said that last time too, and I think he had a really good plan for it, but she won't go for it because she wants to control it, so there's no way we're gonna wrestle those people away unless, I suppose we could butt heads with civil
No.
service and reclassify them or something nuts.
And then the other thing you may wanna check with Paul is, you wanna be sure if anyone's doing remodeling, that they're getting building permits.
Yeah,
And that kinda shows you the cost.
yeah.
Because if you're outside
Yeah.
and you're remodeling the deal, moving some walls, electrical outlets or whatever,
Yeah.
you have to get a permit.
That's why I suggested we have Leahy involved, that Patrick do a memo or somebody, maybe Chris, that says if you're doing these things, involve Jerry Leahy for plans and so forth and permits and that kind of stuff. That's a good reminder.
The only material one was Diane, and I talked to Jerry and I talked to Paul, and Diane said, this is my money, my project, I'm running it, no thanks.
There you have it.
Well, I just wanna know if we got a
Yeah.
building permit.
Well, I think we have, if we do a memo and just say, if you're doing anything like that, check with, be sure that, run it through Leahy as a matter of ordering this.
If she's got that money, it's by statute.
Yeah, I don't think we can
Supposed to
do
be-
anything, but I think we need to be careful about a building permit.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be for technology. Anyway. Maybe we could ask her what her technology plans are.
We had a
Yeah, I'm
Tuesday.
sure she'd be glad to share.
We, sometime in the past, I talked with Diane and got a copy of the statute and read it. It goes quite a while back. Remodeling the technology room counts as technology.
Okay.
And that's gonna be your argument.
And that's the argument that Diane gave me. And, yeah, I can't argue with it because
That's it.
that's above my pay grade.
All right, and that's okay, I mean,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, I
I'll
don't
let
blame
Joe
you.
argue with it.
I don't need
I
it.
asked Jerry about it, and he had a very definite point of view that she told him to cut out.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I'm not, we don't need to have a battle we can't win or that is unnecessary, but I just think it's a matter of orderliness that if we're remodeling a building we don't own, is there, what's going on here? What's
The other
problem?
thing I'll say is Riley does a great job in the public defenders and
Oh,
works
yeah.
like crazy. The only thing is you have some people in that office getting 8 to 10% raises.
And, his argument is that's what he needs to bring the parity with the county attorney.
I'll speak to that. I agree with what Riley's doing, and we did try to adjust those wages so they are competitive, because I think that's what the law says,
Yes.
that it's supposed to be similar wages.
Okay.
But, yeah. So frankly, I'd go along with these requested budget.
All right, so if
Plus-
that's the case, if I'm hearing the general consensus is that these seem to be understandable and for the most part reasonable, let's go to the
See, listen,
page.
we need to do an open meetings notice. Did we do that?
Well, this is an open meeting.
What?
Yeah, but it wasn't announced.
You didn't ask
We
it.
didn't say so, did we?
No.
Well, we do have, the open meetings is
Right.
retroactive to, it's up on the law. We have the county clerk here, it's being recorded, so I think we're within the law, it's just my memory.
And we did it at our board
Yeah.
meeting too.
Yeah.
Right, so it's definitely an open
Sorry,
meeting.
it was.
Mary Ann said.
And it was published.
Didn't mean to interrupt things.
Okay, so let's go to page 4. And the way I did the budget this year is I had existing operations and asked for a budget and tried to work that under the amount generated by the 28-cent levy that's currently in place. But the other thing that's out there working is the Douglas County Juvenile Justice Center property tax levy impact. And so I have a breakdown of, I went public once and said that my initial projection is that we could have a $0.015 increase in the county property tax levy driven by the cost associated with the new Juvenile Justice Center. So this sheet, page 4, gives a breakdown. Annual debt service on a $114 million bond. The first 3 years would be interest only while the construction is happening. And that's a number I got from Emeritus, $4.8 million, which equates to 1.1 cent. And Claire, that was the number that I talked about, that just covering debt service was 1.1 cent. I put another 1/10 of a cent for project costs not covered by the bond. There's costs coming out of the JCDC that, specifically cost of legal counsel, and there's some, other tests that bond counsel says aren't considered construction costs that, I put in the budget at a 1/10 of a cent. Also, in the public properties in Jerry Leahy's budget, the operating and maintenance cost of the OHA building, which we're probably gonna take over and begin operating fairly soon, maybe as soon as September when OHA is out. That's gonna cost some money for utilities and maintenance. It's in okay shape, but not great shape. There's work to be done there. And then there's an operating contingency of 0.2 of a cent, which really is a little higher. It's closer to $800,000. 0.2 of a cent really equates to, it's about $400,000 for
Each cent.
each 1/10 of a cent. So that's how we get to the $1.5 million. And so a thought here is, given that our budget deficit is a little over 800,000, that we could potentially use that operating contingency, which would be around $800,000 for next year, and use that to fund the budget deficit. So that's one way to do it that I'll put out there. And then the second part of that page is what happens in years 4 to 30 once, the buildings are complete. You see, we start principal repayment on the bond, which is another $2 million a year. We have the operating cost of the buildings, that's coming from Paul Cone, court security. And you add it to the existing cost, and right now, that's 2.9 cents. It could be lower depending on what happens with property valuations over that 2-year period. So I think these numbers here are conservative, but that's just the background on where I came up with the 1.5 and 2.9 to 3 cents.
Commissioner Cavanaugh?
All right. Joe, the top
Mike,
column
Yes,
for 6 million,
yes,
that's the impact on the 1920 budget, is that correct?
yes,
And the bottom column, 11.5 million, that's the impact on subsequent budgets after year 4? Is that
Yes.
right? Okay, so for the next 3 years, this thing is gonna cost $6 million a year, is that right? Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
that's what we should budget, yeah.
Okay, and the following 26 years, it'll cost 11.5 million a year, roughly,
Yes.
okay? So, what's the grand total there? If you total all that up and multiply it by the number of years, what are we talking?
Let's see here, so if we take 27 times 11.5. And 3 times 6, so that'd be about 325 million. Right.
This operating costs of the new building that you have, for instance, if the building includes, the complex includes, all the court services that we're currently doing, all the county attorneys that we're currently doing, all the public defenders we're currently doing, and the youth center that we're currently doing, those are not included in that operating cost number, is that right?
That is the cost that the building commission would charge us for the space, so it includes all the services provided by the building commission.
Okay, and is that gonna be fixed over that period of time?
No, I mean, the building commission every year does an annual budget and determines the cost to charge the city and the county.
Okay, so maybe with the exception of the principal repayment,
Yeah, the debt service should be locked.
that's locked, everything else is subject to adjustment over time.
Yes.
So when we say,
With the corresponding potential offset of increases in property values, that both should be increased.
that's on
over
the
time.
revenue side, I'm just
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
the
you're
expense
right,
side.
you're right.
So the total expense of 325 is a floor, and it'll certainly go up from there, but we don't know where to, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's the floor when we're guessing on the operating costs? I mean, that's our best guess from the building commission, but I don't see how that constitutes a floor.
You think it'll go down?
50-50 chance. I mean, this is just our best guess based on historical data of what we think it ought to be, but I don't think you can call that a floor. Or a
Okay,
ceiling.
well, I guess I'd ask then the building commission, and I will, for the operating costs going back to 1973, and see if it ever did go down historically. I'm not aware that it ever did, but maybe it did. And based on that, maybe it could in the future. Nothing else ever goes down, but maybe they could do that. The cost then that you're anticipating in the top column, the $6 million cost, would, in your opinion, if we go to that second column, require an immediate 1.5 cent increase in the mill levy?
That would, given that we only want to increase the mill levy once in the 3 years that this is gonna be a construction project, it's, you know, I'm your finance director, I'm conservative, I'm saying that in that case, we should make it $0.015, and that I feel comfortable would cover us for the 3-year construction period.
Okay. And then at the end of that period, in year 4, you're anticipating an additional increase of 2.9.
And that's where we get into a lot more uncertainty, and, you know, we just have to see what the actual cost when the buildings are there are, what the property valuation's done, but, you know, that's just my best guess, but I feel there's a lot more uncertainty in the years 4 to 30 numbers than there are in the years 1 to 3 number.
Okay, but when you say there'd be uncertainty in the cost of the property values, what does that mean?
The revenue side, our tax revenues.
Oh, I see, okay. Right. And do you have projections for that going out that far?
No, I mean, property values, you know, in the 8 years I've been here, they've increased, the lowest increase has been 0.5% a year, the highest increase has been this year where we're assuming 5%, so, you know, it could anywhere, you know, when there's a recession, or like in 2008, boom, you know, when things fall, they fall quickly, but, you know, right now we're in a period where we're seeing 4 to 5% growth, which, you know, a few years ago we were all talking about our structural deficit, and now that we're up to 4 to 5% growth, we're essentially getting pretty close to covering that. I mean, in our whole gap that we're under $1 million on our regular existing operating budget is, you know, compared to recent, without making a cut, is better than we've been able to do recently, and that's because we're getting the 5% increase in property values along with the treasurer's increase. I mean, a lot of years we've had to come and make, you know, $2-3 million cuts, and this year we're not looking at potentially having to do that.
Right. So if we're looking at this thing, you know, kind of all down to the bottom, the first column is 325 million, probably as a floor. The second column is 4.4 cent mill levy increase.
No, it's inclusive. See the penny in a 5 existing cost, so it's really, the first part is in there, so the maximum I would have it would be just under 3 cents in total.
Okay, so
It's cumulative.
it would be 2.9 minus, I'm trying to do this.
You see that existing cost years 1 to 3, the 1.5,
Uh-huh.
that's the sum total
already
under
in there.
total expense.
Okay,
So it's like 1.5 now, and the estimate is 1.4 when the project's done. It's for a total of 2.9.
okay.
For the
okay.
total project.
Yeah, so it's not 4.3.
Gotcha,
Right.
gotcha. So, that is then the $43 going forward from
Right.
year 4 on. And, the OHA building operating cost, what's that predicated on?
I talked to Jerry, and that's the cost of the utilities for that building, and just maintenance costs that would have to go on in it. I don't know if you walked through it, like I say, it's in good but not great shape, and so that would be considered a county property administered by public properties, and that would just kind of be the operating and maintenance cost of that building.
That building sitting empty?
Will be.
Well, it'll be empty, and then I don't think the final decision's been made about what we're gonna put in it, but I assume will be some county or state functions that we could put in that building.
We still leave space in the key line building and some
Right, we
others.
could move those
And
out.
we'd be moving those
Right.
over, so
Right,
we should have an offset on some of these things.
that's true.
Mark, just for the record, Mark Kraft is next.
Oh, I just have
When
two.
When Jim is through.
Yeah, just two. The project cost not covered by the bond, Joe, you give us a kind of an outline that JCDC will be charging legal counsel for
Right.
non-contract costs. Could you give me a list of those? What the list would include in toto?
Yeah, I can do that. I can tell you the major one would be the legal costs not covered by the bond.
I bet. The other thing, the operating contingency,
Yep.
same thing, I mean, what is that?
A contingency in any sort of construction, project is, kind of stuff happens, and that's all that is.
Yeah, devil's in the details. Do we have any idea what that would encompass? I could drive a truck through operating contingency language.
Yeah, I mean, and I think PJ will affirm that most time, anytime there's a construction project, you just have a contingency for construction costs, right?
Right. I
So,
mean, it's just,
it's
a
kinda-
good safety feature, and you hope that you don't have to use it.
And that's what I'm saying, in the first year, we could potentially use that to fund the budget deficit, assuming that we might have kind of a slow start, and, by the, I know they gotta do a lot of work, and Patrick, can you remember when they were talking about the earliest they could really start full construction over there?
No, the fall, probably, wouldn't it be
I mean, right away, because they gotta wait for MUD
MUD to move, which probably, so, we'll be
and
later
they
than
gotta,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's next year.
Yeah,
I mean, there may be some things that we
So I'm
don't-
thinking that in the first year, that money, we might be able to make the assumption that we could use that $800,000 there to fund our budget deficit.
first half of the fiscal year.
Yep,
Right, and when you say that, I thought the deficit was coming in at $868,452, and that looks like $500,000.
yeah, that's really, should be up a little, because each penny, a tenth of a cent is worth, 400,000, so 2/10 of a cent would be 800,000, so it'd get us pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, cause you're showing 110,
Yeah.
is 300,000 here.
So that 6 million then, if we were able to do that, would encompass the additional 869,452.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Which would leave us 5 million and change that we would have to come up with through the mill levy increase, right? Property
Well,
tax.
the mill levy, how I'm anticipating setting this up for budget purposes is creating a new fund that we'll call the Douglas County Justice Center Fund. And that fund would have its own levy of a penny and a half, just to make it transparent. And so, starting in the 2020 calendar year, that penny and a half levy would be raised through property tax
Excuse me, just a
and
point.
funded.
Do you have to get a legislative authority to do that, to establish another fund? You can do that yourself?
Well, as long as the commissioners approve it, yeah, we
Okay.
can do it.
Okay, so what you're saying here, this property tax increase would be separate from our Douglas County mill levy? It would be voted on separate from our Douglas County mill
No,
levy?
it would be, if you ever look at our mill levy right now, 28 point something cents, there's about 5 or 6 components. And, there is a component for bond funds or whatever, so this would be like a separate fund with its own levy. And
Like the health center.
like the health center has, right, exactly, aren't there like 6 or 7 of them, Dan?
Yeah, it might be a little, definitely 6 or 7, maybe a little more.
Right,
Yeah.
and so this one would be added to that at a penny and a half, and then when the property tax proceeds come in, they would go directly to that fund, and so it would be all transparent on what that juvenile justice center is costing.
Okay, so when we do just this first year adjustment, because we'd be taking money out of that fund to fund some deficit spending, would there have to be something different done that first year to accommodate that transaction?
No, I think so. I think there is gonna be a partial, and how we could do that is there's gonna be an offset. If you remember, we just paid the building commission $1.3 million for those construction costs that they fronted, and then they came back and wanted us to pay. But eventually, when the bond is floated, we'll be reimbursed for that. So we would take that 1.3 million that we get back, out of the bond proceeds, and I would suggest we would put that into this new Juvenile Justice Center fund, because that's what it's related to. So that amount plus the one payment that we would receive next fiscal year, in the year 2020 before June 30th, I think it's the March 31st payment. If you take those two amounts, that should allow us to make the debt service payment.
Okay, thanks.
Mark?
Yes, thank you. This is operating cost, but OHA could bring in an income, could it not? From rent,
Who would we rent it to?
offices?
I think it wouldn't bring income, but it
You're
would,
not gonna listen to my question.
oh,
Go on.
oh, that it would be, I think PJ said this, there would be an offset to rent that we're paying at like the Key Line building or something that, or adult probation. I think we're talking about moving potentially one of the state probation groups
Into the OHA.
OH
Well,
building.
Juvenile would go into MED.
So-
But adult.
But adult
So,
potentially.
there's an offset, but that offset isn't recorded here,
No, you're right.
okay, because we don't know.
Because it's uncertain.
That's what I
Right.
said.
So, okay, now, the cost of going down to 4 to 30 years, I sure wish Jim would have stayed. Would he make notes on his pad for me?
So
He left his pad.
what's your?
Okay, the operating cost of the new building, but we can subtract the operating cost of the old building, can we not?
Well, that's the question that we've been saying, is that when these people move out of this building and across the street, we're gonna have to, what's gonna happen with that space? And this is a conservative projection, so I haven't put that in because I haven't seen anyone told me there's a definite commitment of who's gonna use the vacated space in this building yet.
But there should be some offset there. Do you have, I
But
don't
there'll
wanna
be
cut
offset.
you
That
off.
won't happen till year 4 though.
Right, I know. So these numbers are all subjective and compared to
They're
the
estimates, yes.
income savings.
Yes, they're conservative,
Right. They don't count the savings we'd have or the offsets we'd have.
right.
I don't think that there would be an offset of operating costs here. Somebody's still gotta pay the rent. If somebody,
No, I'm talking about the old juvenile detention center.
all right, fine, very good, okay, thank you.
There's no operating costs
Got it.
on the old juvenile
Well,
detention.
yeah,
Got it.
depends on what we use it for. I mean, if it,
Yeah, well, yeah, but that'd be a different use. And it wouldn't be ready for use right away. Unless you're gonna lock us up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Whatever the operating costs are of the current center will go away. Or most of it.
Unless we're using it for another county purpose.
Yep.
And I didn't put that in because we don't have a real definitive plan.
No, we don't.
So it could
A lot of
easily
ideas.
be just the 1.5% after.
This to me is a worst case, right?
it's not
it's
gonna.
worse.
It's gonna be. Don't kid yourself though. It's not gonna be 1.5 cents in total for the entire.
I know,
Thing.
I know. But,
I mean,
you
you're not
know,
gonna get away with.
That's why I said the fourth year.
But it could be less than the 2.9.
It
you're
could
right.
Yes.
potentially.
Yeah.
And we'll try and make it less, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
Claire, do you have anything?
No,
Mary Ann?
that's good.
Okay, well, I think, and then you can squeeze in that $90-some thousand, $90 to $98,000 from, okay?
We'll use the number that Sherry Glass sent.
Yeah,
us.
absolutely. Okay, any other comments? or
So,
questions?
am I getting that there's a general consensus that when we
Yes.
bring this budget to the county commissioners for approval, that we should treat it, we'll add that
Yeah.
90,000 and then we'll keep this amount in there, assuming things go as planned, that we'll have this separate levy for the Juvenile
Yeah.
Justice Center, and we'll just assume this year we'll use that to cover that $850,000 deficit, and we'll bring the budget forward that way.
I think so, and I predict a 6-1 vote.
Okay.
You, I think, might be correct.
I think Mike is so smart on things like that.
My only concern is that as we go for full transparency and have people that are going to be haranguing us over every nickel that is in the budget, that if we say this 1.5 cents is for the new project, but oh, by the way, we're gonna take 800,000 out for a budget deficit this year. That's,
Yeah, I think we need to be saying
But,
that.
but we could talk about that, but the other thing that we also know on, that we try and have a budget that's balanced.
agreed.
But in reality, if we spend less, which we usually do, or our revenue is greater, then in essence, we can get to a balanced budget without, so that's what I'm saying, it's a contingency plan.
All right.
How we fund that 800,000. But if things go as typical, we probably wouldn't have to do that.
Don't ever leave.
But
All right.
that's my contingency where I go for it,
All right, thank you.
okay?
Okay, I think we're on track. Any other matters we need to discuss here? Oh, Jim?
Yeah, well, I have,
No, go ahead.
no, you know, if you look at the agenda, there's a couple other things I
Oh,
wanna, talk about real
Excuse me, yeah.
quickly,
Oh,
and,
okay, before
Well-
we move on then, I have
Okay.
one thing on this.
Sure.
So, Joe, the bottom line takeaway from this is that you're saying we need to raise property taxes this year 1.5 cents, and ultimately, inclusive of that 1.5, 2.9 cents on our
up to
millage.
2.9, I would say that that would be my worst case.
Okay.
And we'll have to revisit that, when the project construction is complete,
It's 3 years away.
3 years away.
And we need to do that because the life of this project is gonna require, as near as you can tell, at least $325 million of county money.
Well, it's not all county, some of it's, Sherwood's taking in something.
Yeah, a whopping $5 million for construction,
They may-
$5 million
they may-
for programs.
But anyway, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But, you know, yeah, if you look at the debt service alone for 30 years, you know, that's well over 200 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, historically, and I'll go back and find out, this is the biggest of its kind in the history of Douglas County.
Well, I think we probably had some, some big expenditures when we built the health center years ago and the hospital and so forth, but, you know, dollar for dollar, it may have been pretty competitive, you know, but, I mean, if we're gonna do this, go build a new courthouse, it's gonna cost money,
Well,
and general center.
And we've had bigger increases.
point is,
before.
Yeah.
if you were to remodel, and I've talked to Jerry Leahy about it, if you were to remodel the present juvenile detention center, you would spend the same,
Oh, sure.
more money, he's telling me, than what we'd spend there, and you still would have to look at maybe taking a building down and relocating the state offices to have that parking, and probably having to build a parking structure or something there, so you'd spend more. The second thing is you need it, if I'm correct, for the county attorney and the courts, or no, what's that alternative? And, you know,
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah, and of course, I don't know that because I'm not in real estate or I'm not a contractor, but I don't know that I totally agree with that assessment. I frankly, we're all going back a little bit. I wish we had done a true alternative plan that we could say this one is no good or this one, you know, but unfortunately we didn't. But I understand what you're saying, and there's a disagreement on it. So, but I understand exactly what you're saying, PJ, and I don't know that I agree. I have no education to say that I'm right.
You know, on the renovation
Yeah, right.
of that.
And I understand what you're saying as well, and I totally disagree with you, because we have had experts look at exactly that number, people who do this for a living, and they say, no, that's not correct. It would cost less, a lot less, in respect to the youth center versus the kids jail downtown. And the things like the OHA building, which apparently we have no plan for, could be repurposed to be a lawyer's building, as could the MUD headquarters building, at significant savings versus
I've
the
heard this before.
4 extra stories of new construction that you're gonna okay over at the tower.
Have you heard
I
this
mean,
before?
that's just a disagreement, as Mike says, but there are people who have done this over and over and over again for the last year at no expense to the county, who say, no, that's not true.
And I regret this coming up, because there's no point in this, because we all have very definite opinions about it, and I'm kind of milquetoast in the middle a little bit, but all in all, it is a
No, we
good
can
deal. Okay, anyway, let's do, you're right, let's do move on.
Okay.
Do you have other, you got
Yeah,
other
the
agenda
other
items?
item I wanted to talk to you all about was accounts receivable with Health and Human Services. You know, we resolved the AR issue with probation at the youth center, but there was a second accounts receivable issue out there with Health and Human Services that they call the Marie E money, where they've been billing HHS and not being reimbursed for it. And right now, the account receivable that they owe us is about $150,000. But an offset that's going on is that Health and Human Services also runs the Lincoln facility where prisoners are sent from the county jail for their psychic evaluation.
Lancaster County or Douglas?
Or
Lancaster.
what?
You say the county jail, which county jail?
Ours.
Okay.
And, you know, this has become more prevalent recently, and this year we ran out of money in our budget, even after we did a supplement. I think we spent $400,000 or $500,000 on it, and we still have a receivable that's, you know, close to $400,000 there that we owe them that we haven't paid. So
Do
what?
we owe who, Joe?
Health and Human Services. So they owe us $150 and we owe them about $400. But I think that gives us some leverage and so what I'm asking the commissioners for permission is to work with Brad at the youth center, and they haven't really been willing to come and talk to us and discuss this issue, is that we would prepare a letter and say we want to meet, Patrick and I and people from the youth center want to meet with them, which is what we did with state probation, and see if we could work out an arrangement where we could resolve these receivable issues on both sides. Because right now I think we have some leverage because we owe them more money than they owe us.
Okay. Jim?
Okay, just so I can get this straight, I thought we started off talking about the Douglas County Health Center, but it's the Douglas County Youth Center that this, okay. And so they owe us $150,000 for what?
It's billings that we've given them, and this is a complex argument, is that they feel that they overpaid in the past and that this money should really be, is money owed them by state probation, but state probation has been saying no, so instead they haven't been paying our account receivable.
But it's for kids at the youth center that are under the jurisdiction of HHS, as opposed to probation.
So this is state reimbursement for us holding kids at our youth center.
Right. And it's a much less amount than probation, because most of the kids are probation kids. There are some HHS kids. That's why it's a much less amount.
Okay. So the state owes us $150,000 and
Yeah.
unreimbursed, we're taking care of kids at their order. Okay. And then the $400 the other way is what?
That's prisoners from the county jail who are sent for psychiatric evaluations, primarily at the Lincoln Center. And there's been a big increase of this over the past few years, and they've been holding them longer. And you know, this is one of the issues why we could never get people from CNHC in to see there for their evaluations, because they're always taking people from the jail who they view as, my theory, as paying customers, so they're taking them. And this amount exploded on us, and even though we put like a $200,000 supplement in this year's budget, we still ran out of money, and we owe them close to $400,000 now. And so what I'm saying is, you know, they haven't been willing to talk to us really. They've been blowing us off on the money that they owe us, but now we owe them twice as much as they owe us. So I'm suggesting that we go back to them and write them a letter and say, hey, let's try and have a meeting with your representatives and our representatives and see if we could get this resolved.
Mary Ann?
Well, I see it the same way as jail reimbursement. We allocated X number of dollars, it went over, sorry, we're out of money, we can't pay you.
We're the
Yeah.
state.
You know, the thing I'm concerned about too, I wonder whether if we do this, if they say, okay, fine, nobody's coming down, we're not taking anybody anymore in Lincoln of our county prisoners. So what do we do with them? If they're court ordered, are they court ordered?
Yes.
So if they're court ordered and then the Lincoln, the HHS, whoever it is, won't take them, what do we do with
They
them?
sit in our jail.
What's that?
They sit in our jail.
Wow.
They have to be evaluated by the state if it's court ordered and it's for competency.
Okay,
They have to be evaluated by the state.
so you don't think that can happen?
But what's happening is a lot of them are staying at our jail waiting for that to
Yep.
occur because they, you know, they don't have the facilities or the ability to do that because the numbers are up. More people are being, the issue of whether someone is competent or not has increased.
But then they go down.
Because there's a lot of mental health issues involved, just like the mental health is increasing.
But when they go down and sit down at the Lincoln Regional Center awaiting the evaluation, we're on the hook to pay that entire period of time.
And the amount is about $560 a day.
Okay. Mary Ann, did you have something?
Which, well, there's been discussion about that, and it hasn't gone to solution yet, but they could be evaluated here in the jail. We just have to get that agreement to all parties to be able to do that, which would be at a way lesser cost and
It could
more
approach $1 million very quickly.
more quickly,
How
be
could
done
you-
more quickly.
How could you change it, Mary Ann, so we could do that?
I think they have to
Evaluation
agree.
Here,
They have to agree
who does? The
So
state?
they'll have to come up and agree to come up here and evaluate them at our facility.
unless we contract. If they agree to let us contract with somebody to do it
Somebody
here,
else to do it.
right?
They-
Can we work with our state senators to help us to accomplish that?
Diane.
There's been a recent bill that was passed this year that allows that ability to contract with someone other than the regional center, but that's for competency restoration, which is after they are determined competent or not. But the actual, are they competent or not? I think that you could still contract, I'm not sure, so. I think you can still contract for that, but there's just not a lot of doctors out there that do that, for one thing. So that's part of it, but you know, you also need the cooperation of other people involved, like the county attorney and the public defender and that kind of thing.
Is there somebody, I mean, who are we dealing with HHS? I mean, some bureaucrat or some, the head of it, or is there someplace else we can go?
Yeah, I've never been, that's one of the reasons to try and schedule.
Who are we
That's
dealing
one of
with?
the reasons. We got to figure out who it is because thank God Deb Bernardi came to probation or got elevated at probation, and she was great to work with. We got that issue resolved with the HHS. It's like talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, you know.
Well, we need to kind of maybe go above somebody. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, the governor probably wouldn't respond. He doesn't know anything about it, maybe. I don't know, but for the record.
Sherry
But
Dawson.
anyway,
But we have a little leverage here because we
Sure.
owe them more than they owe us, so I'd
Right.
like to utilize that leverage.
well, I don't see any problem with writing a letter if we don't think we're gonna be retaliated against them. I think we should go ahead and do that.
They do.
Nothing
Yeah,
to lose.
let
Right.
Pastor and Joe talk to
Yeah.
them and get it going.
Okay,
And I think we should be looking at how, keeping them here rather than spending $500 a day while they're being evaluated, how do we structure
Right.
something to do that? And if we need to try to talk to senators or others about it.
Who used to do this here.
why don't you say that, Jim?
Okay, this was done here. This is a new thing. When I was in the public defender's office, we did the evaluations, Douglas County did the evaluations here on contract with shrinks here. So I would suggest we talk to Tom Riley and Don Klein about how was that done then? Because we're reinventing the wheel. We're just going back to where it was. And that was a much quicker thing, and there were shrinks here who did it, and they provided the court with the competency things a lot faster than this 6-month, $500 a day wait that we're having downtown.
So why don't we do that? Patrick and
Well, certainly
What
we'll
do
talk to Tom about it. Yeah.
Tom and Don?
Yeah.
Okay,
That'd be great.
maybe they can work that out. Thanks, Jim. Any other comments or questions on this subject? Okay,
Anything else, Joe?
Joe, we got other business, anything else?
No, I think that's what I had for today.
All set then? Okay, well then, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.